Hi, I'm Renee, a solo cottage baker, and I am making 60 loaves of sourdough bread. First, I began by bulking up my starter. I keep a small amount of starter on my countertop and feed it daily. I do discard in between feedings, that way I don't become overrun with discard. And I personally find that my starter does better when I keep it at room temperature rather than in the refrigerator. So I've taken my small amount of starter, and to it I have added equal parts flour and water. Now I'm just mixing it to get a paste-like consistency that you can see here. Once it's stirred really well, I will cover it up and let it go to bed for the night. The next morning, Lob Lolly, our starter, is happy, bubbly, and ready to bake with. To start making the dough for 60 loaves of soft sourdough bread, I take our sourdough starter that we've bulked up and add water to it. They go into the Stella 30-quart mixer, where I then add flour and slow mix. Once the dough is a shaggy consistency, I turn off the mixer and let it rest for 30 minutes. I'll do this 3 times in batches of 24, and then a final batch to make up the remaining 60. After I've let the dough rest for 30 minutes, I add the remaining 10% of water that I held back in the beginning. Then I'll add salt. And because this is a soft sourdough, I need to add a fat and a sugar. I use olive oil and honey. They get mixed in last. I do this all on slow until they're incorporated. And once incorporated, I turn the speed up to high, and I will let it mix for approximately 5 minutes or until the dough comes clean off the sides and begins to look like a pretty Cinderella pumpkin. Not sure why, but this is what I call the Cinderella pumpkin. Now it's time to take out the dough and let it rest and begin our stretch and folds. Please excuse this mess. I usually use scissors to cut the dough out, but I must have misplaced them. I don't know where they are, and so I had to tear it out. I put it into one big bin and then let it rest. I'll do 3 sets of either coil folds, which you see here, or stretch and folds, which I'll show you in a little bit with the jalapeno cheddar loaves. This is the first set of coil folds on this cinnamon raisin bread, which is why all the raisins are on top. After 3 sets, they'll be mixed in fairly well. And depending on the temperature outside, I will let the dough rest anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour in between each set of coil or stretch and fold. This is the jalapeno cheddar. I like to use fresh jalapenos, and here I'm doing a stretch and fold. So I just pick the dough up, stretch it, and pull it over itself. And I will do this as I rotate the bin so that I do it on all 4 sides of the dough. Now I've done my stretch and folds or coil folds over the course of anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours. I'm just cleaning off my work surface, and I went to go get this large bucket of dough. This was my plain loaves, and almost dropped it. Thankfully I saved it. These bins can be so heavy. I get a little arm workout in every dough day. So this is arguably my most favorite part of making bread. I love pre-shaping, and it is just something about it so peaceful. You kind of, I don't know, go into your own little space of meditation. My my mind kind of clears, and it's like playing with Play-Doh as an adult. It's very fun. I absolutely love my animals, and I have the best view between the chickens and a neighbor's pig. I can watch them all as I shape loaves. Once I've let the pre-shaped loaves rest for about 20 minutes, it's time to put them into their final shape. So I will just stretch the dough balls out and roll them into a log, and then I will pinch the sides and place them into the tins. The cinnamon raisin swirl loaves take the longest to shape. They get an added inclusion of a cinnamon sugar mixture, and I put that on the inside of the dough once it's kind of stretched out, and then I will roll it up into the log to create a swirl once it's baked. As I shape these loaves, I really try and keep the cinnamon sugar mixture on the inside of the dough and from falling out. And I do this just by, as I fold it over, I will try and press down on the ends, and then I will also kind of stretch the dough out and press down on the bottom seam. I find that if the cinnamon sugar escapes too much, it creates a sticky mess as it bakes. After everything is shaped, it goes into the fridge. I then take everything back out of the fridge and lay it out to proof. Timing on this is highly dependent on the temperature. It takes anywhere from 8 hours to 12 hours and even more. I then score the loaves. Now this type of bread doesn't need a score if it's proofed properly, but I have been doing this from the beginning, so I just continue to do so. And now they're ready to bake. About halfway through the bake, I take the loaves out and I brush them with a good quality unsalted butter. My setup for this is pretty simple. I just have a folding table and I've laid baking sheets upside down on top of the plastic folding table so it doesn't burn. And then I just brush them with butter. At this point, I check the tops of the loaves for color, and if they are dark enough, then I will go ahead and put another tin on top to stop them from browning. I really just have to keep an eye out on the loaves. Some of them won't be ready for a tin on top, some of them will, and so I just continue to check them throughout the rest of the bake. Getting the bread pans back into the oven once they have the tins on top is a little bit tricky. There's just not as much room, but we always find a way to make it work. And in this oven, the lights are on the left side, so I try and pull the bread pans away from the light a little bit so that it doesn't leave a burnt spot. I temp every loaf from 205 to 210, especially if it has an inclusion. I like to get it above 205 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I brush them one more time with good quality unsalted butter. I have a few more loaves to bake, so I take them out of refrigeration. I put them in the fridge to slow proofing while the other bread baked. And now it's time for the bread to cool, so I just take every loaf out of the tin. It's always fun to take it out and look it over to see how it came out. I will put it on these racks in the back and let them cool. And then once they have completely cooled, I wrap them in a plastic bread bag and tie them with a bread tie. Then they get labeled and loaded up to go out to customers. If you've made it this far, I can't thank you enough. This is my first long form video. I really didn't know what I was doing, but I had a lot of fun. And again, I just can't thank you enough for being here.